From Unity Church of Christianity in Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational Christian church providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress with the Reverend Howard Caesar.
In Unity, we like to teach on a regular basis that each of us, as a spiritual being, is complete. We are whole. That God's Spirit in us is whole and complete. That there is a divine blueprint at the core of us. That we are made in the image and after the likeness of God. That there is a dimension of us that is the essence of God, the spark of the divine, and that dimension of us is perfect and whole and complete. Each of us as a spiritual being. Excuse me. I can't get that out of there. That must have been Christmas or New Year's or something. So get the point that each of us as a spiritual being has the Spirit of God in us, and so there is that dimension of us that is complete. And yet each of us as a human being is incomplete. I'm not saying that to be negative at all. It just means basically because we've been given free will, we must individually take responsibility for the life that we create and the current level of consciousness that we may be living from. And there's a lot that goes into, of course, the building of our consciousness, and we've talked about that as well. But we are incomplete in the sense that we are still growing spiritually, we are still maturing, we are still evolving, we are still awakening, we are still in the process of learning what is the truth from what is a lie or an untruth or an illusion. And we are still learning also to silence the voice of ego, which is the voice of separation and fear, and begin to expand and broaden our listening for the voice of the Holy Spirit that takes us into oneness and into joy and peace and love. So that's a process that's unfolding. And so when we consider our lives and who we are being in life and what we are experiencing in this life and the reason that we came into this life, you have to understand that it's unfinished. It's unfinished. Now, that's the good news and that's the bad news. Because wherever we may be, we can make it better, of course. The beauty of that realization is that if you are a person who has not been as happy as you have wanted to be, and your life hasn't been all that you had hoped it would be, and you've come on some hard times, it's understood that we all have to some extent, and that basically each of us is unfinished business. We have unfinished business. We are incomplete at this point, but we're moving and growing and evolving, and that opportunity is there. The door is open always. I have set before you an open door, as the scriptures say, and that door is always open wide for us to step through into the next dimension of who we are held to be in the mind of God. And so even if you would assess your life in such a way that you would say, my life has been pretty good. I'm pretty happy with my life, and I've had some degree of success and prosperity, and I'm pretty healthy, and I've learned and I've grown spiritually, and that's absolutely wonderful. It really is. And yet you're not complete. You're not complete. From the human side of bringing the spiritual, complete essence of you into full expression. Because there is a depth of you that is yet to be unexpressed. As Robert Browning, the poet, spoke of it, he said, there's an imprisoned splendor that is waiting to be birthed and brought forth in all of us. There's a degree of imprisoned splendor in each and every one of us, and that's part of the journey, is to uncover it. And that's a process. So the next level of spiritual consciousness is waiting to be expressed. There is a dimension of you that is unfinished, and you have unfinished business in this life. Because God and the universe is your friend, you have the support of God and the universe, and then things therefore can get a lot better than even what it has been if you do your part. So we're about finishing what we have started, that there can be great satisfaction in finishing what we have started and being about that process. Some time ago, I received an email from a congregant. And the congregant was telling me about how they had found inner peace. And I'll read you that email. This person said, "I think I have found inner peace. I read an article that said the way to achieve inner peace is to finish things I had started. Today, I finished 2 bags of potato chips, a chocolate pie, a bottle of Mountain Dew, and a small box of chocolate candy. I feel better already." I swear I got an email from a person like that. My answer to that, it's only temporary. We are talking about a much higher level of completion than that, and satisfaction here today. We are here about finishing what we have started in terms of a movement in consciousness within us. We are wanting to move toward being a freer being, towards a sense of freedom, free of fears, free of insecurities, free of doubts, to be a happier, more loving, more peaceful being, because that is what exists for each of us. There is the next level of that. We came into this life to pick up where we left off. I personally believe that we pre-existed coming into this life, that you made the choice to come here, to learn, to grow the next level. You have a mission. You have a job description. You have an assignment. You have certain areas for you to learn. And you have certain things that you're going to bump up against along the way to help you learn. And so all of us have challenges and problems. It's part of it. We came into that life knowing that there would be those things that we would be challenged by, that we have a job and a mission. You know, there's a wonderful movie out that is, and actually a book as well, called Unbroken. And it's a true story about Louis Zamperini. And I actually went with my wife to see the movie. And most of the movie was all about all that he went through and suffered through when he was in World War II. And he was at sea on a raft for days on end, and then finally was picked up by a boat. This is in World War II. So the Japanese came and picked him up and took him to a concentration camp or a prison camp. And he had to endure tremendous beatings and punishment that he received there from the guards. And it's about a man who was unbroken. He just had an inner strength to move through it. Now the book takes it forward into a place where he went through a dark time after he got back from the war and survived this all. And then through a time meeting up with Billy Graham, he changed his life around, and he went back and he finished. It was kind of like he finished some things that were incomplete in him. And he went back to Japan, and he made peace with many of the guards that had beaten him and that he had held resentments toward. And it was just a beautiful thing. He also had, he was a runner, and he had run in the Olympics prior to World War II. And he was supposed to run in the next Olympics, which he didn't get to, obviously. And so later on in his life, he got to carry the torch in the Olympics. And some of you know that story, and it's beautiful. But the beautiful thing is that given that opportunity to finish, to have completion. And you know, all of us perhaps are familiar with having read one time or another some of the stories. There are literally thousands of people that have had the experience of a near-death experience. And so the story almost always says that they experienced tremendous love and a light and a peacefulness and a beyond description, and that their sense was they did not want to return. They wanted to stay in that domain beyond the veil. And yet they received then a message that said they needed to go back, that there was an element of completion. There was an element of needing to finish what was not yet complete that called them back. And so we get a sense that we have a job that is a mission here, that we have a sense of purpose. We have something to finish. We have something to complete, that our soul knows on some level what that is. We can bring that into awareness if we are really true and sincere in wanting to do that. In the Gospel of John, chapter 17, if you go to verse 7, Jesus, at this point, is completing his final days on the planet and his mission. And he prays a prayer. And the words of that verse 4 in chapter 17 are these. He says, in prayer to God, I have glorified thee on the earth. I have finished the work which you gave me to do. I have finished the work which you gave me to do. So Jesus obviously had a work to do. I don't think we argue with that. He was aware that he had a mission. He was a teacher of truth. He was a great example of love and forgiveness. And he wasn't one who came into the world to sweep away all the problems of humanity. He came into the world to say that you have it in you to overcome these, to be unbroken by the circumstances of life. And in doing so, you will find something deeper and richer that lives in you than you ever knew to be. And you'll find the divine in you. Jesus was on the cross, of course, in Gospel of John 19. And he said, one of his last statements is, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Jesus was always teaching, always being an example. And his final words were three: "It is finished." It is finished. And you can find that in the 19th chapter. And it says in that passage, in that verse, he said, "It is finished," and he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. He released on, and it was as if he had completed his mission. He had completed what he had come to do and agreed to. And just prior to that, actually, time of going to the cross and being on the cross, in John 16, there is a verse where Jesus says, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me you might have peace." Okay, we're getting to a place, it's about peace. And he says, the next sentence is, "In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." So again, it's the idea that we're going to have challenges and problems. No one avoids these. They are part of the journey. They are there to be overcome, to rise above them, to not be broken by them, okay? And so let us not assume that we then do not have some mission or purpose that we came in with. And Jesus' continuation of a prayer in Gospel of John, chapter 17, where these words, you need to hear these. He says and prays, "As you have sent me into the world, even so I have sent them into the world, that they also might be sanctified through the truth." So if we take Jesus at his word, what was stated there, he is saying that you and I have been sent into the world, that we may be sanctified through the truth that shall set you free. What does sanctify mean? Sanctify means to make free. It means to consecrate. It means to set apart as holy. There is a part of you that is holy and sacred that wants to be set apart and realized and lived from. And in that sacred part, you will find the truth of who you are, the truth of God, and be set free. So we are here to be set free spiritually from within, to experience that of us that is holy and sacred, that is of the image and likeness of God spoken of in Genesis. Now, how do you know that your life is unfinished? You are here. It is unfinished. Are you breathing? It is unfinished. I don't care what the circumstances, I don't care what the state of your situation in life. If you are here and you are breathing, it is unfinished. And don't ever think it's finished until it's finished, okay? We are all like an unfinished painting. As long as we are alive, there are still strokes to be made upon the canvas of our souls. There was a wonderful article that appeared in Unity magazine some years ago, and it was written by Layla Stahl. And she wrote about an experience that she had with her teenage son, a conversation that they had had, and the reflections and insights that she got from that. And she really remembered that particular conversation years later. And she begins by saying that anyone having a child may come to realize that their offspring is wiser than they had suspected. And she said she had the typical ball-playing, gum-chewing teenager. And most of her experiences with him led her to believe that exploring his mind to its very depths would produce little more than the score of last night's baseball game. However, she was driving him to school on this particular morning, and it was a foggy fall morning, and she made some idle comment about the weather. There was this long, silent pause, and then all of a sudden, she heard her son say, "It looks like an unfinished painting." And so she thought about that, and she began to peer out the car window herself, seeing it more from the fog-wrapped streets, and it did appear to her as an unfinished painting. All the normal objects were there. There were the buildings and the trees and the street signs, but their lines were blurred by the fog. They were indefinite, and their colors were pale and indistinct. And her mind kind of filled with that whole dynamic, and she had a feeling come over her, and the words unfinished painting kept echoing kind of through her mind, and suddenly there seemed to have for her, those words, a significance in her life and in all of life. Unfinished painting, unfinished painting. You see, every person, their life is an unfinished painting. And we are given the blank canvas, and we're given the paints and the brush and all that is needed to create our life painting. And it's formed from every thought, every word, every deed. And each of these adds another stroke with the brush. And it forms another line, and it gives shape, and it gives dimension and experience. And so God has given us all, each of us, the tools and the freedom to use those tools in the way that we choose. And some people use these tools and create, pictures of beauty and wonder and that are clear and bold and bright and just vibrant. And others, at least for a time, sometimes kind of create a fog of incompleteness. For a time, they may be painting things with gray and dark tones. The mother of this boy, after dropping off her son at school, she wondered what it is that makes the difference between those two, those who paint their life and painting with vibrant, radiant colors, and those who sometimes do with gray and dark tones. And she had driven a while and reached the top of a hill, crest of a hill, and she began to see the fog begin to dissipate, and faint rays of the sun begin to pierce the gloom of the day. And slowly and beautifully, that which had been, indistinct and blurred, it took on now form and color. And so she realized that she was watching happen the answer to her question, that God is light, and God's light is always shining for us. But sometimes we observe it from the fog of our own consciousness, from the fog of our own misunderstandings, our uncertainties, our insecurities, our doubts, our fears, and we paint a darker picture than life needs to be, or that we need to be in it. So today we're here to paint brightness around the future, okay? And that begins with the colors that you choose to paint your world with, paint yourself with, paint the world with. It's very important. Jesus said, in the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer because I have overcome the world. Well, for us, life, its challenges and circumstances never take the brush out of our hands. We always have the brush, and maybe they have caused us to paint with gray and dark tones for a time. Maybe we've been in the fog of doubt and fear and resentment or unforgiveness or whatever it might be based on what we went through. Sometimes it's a loss, and things get gray and dark toned. We all have losses in life, and we have loved ones that we lose at times. We may go through a divorce. We may have a loss of a job, a loss of a business, these kinds of things. Some years ago, there was an article written by Ardis Whitman, and it was in Reader's Digest, and the title of the article was The Invitation to Live. And this woman talked about her mother in this article. And she told how she remembered the time when her father suddenly died, and she went home to be with family and her mother in Nova Scotia to attend the funeral. And after the funeral was over, afterward, she begged her mother to come and live with her and to take her along. But her mother refused, gently but firmly. And when her mother saw her off, it was on a winter, snowy, stormy day. And they were hugging, and they were out of doors. And she remembers her mom, barely 5 feet tall, standing in a black coat set against these snowy fields. And she said there was nothing small about the inner strength of my mother, especially in the way that her mother sent her on her way. Because when they hugged, the last thing that her mother told her was, "I want you to know that even if I lose all of you, I'll make a life for myself, and it'll be a good one." Isn't that powerful? No matter what she said, I'm going to make life good. Because the truth is, I can. It's your mission, no matter what, to make life good. Make something good of it. Now, the daughter realized those words were for her, to comfort her and so forth, but she also knew that her mother would come as close to anyone on earth as making them true. And so here now, as she wrote this article, she said, now my mother has passed on, and she still could remember seeing that brave little figure in the swirling white snow, and she saw her as her symbol of life, a symbol of life. Because essentially her mother had taken her freedom to paint the situations of her life with colors that left brightness around the truth of life and death. And the way she painted that helped color the canvas of her daughter's life. It served her. It was a symbol of life. That no matter what, my mom was saying, you can make it good. You can make it good. So remember that God has given us all tools and the freedom to choose the colors with which to paint our world, to paint our life. There is a law of cause and effect, and what we put in motion is going to return to us. There is a mechanism of feedback that we get in this world that we get to see, sort of how things are going. And so there are colors of love and forgiveness. There are colors of letting go. There's colors of peace and joy. That's what we want to paint with. And remember, our painting of ourselves and our lives is actually a gift to the others around us. They get to view our painting. They get to experience the energies of what was coming through you as you have painted your life. Sometimes we can learn and experience so much in various aspects of life through the examples of other people that we have been around or have experienced. We are unfinished, and we can learn from others how they have painted the world. There's an example of a person who is a life giver, and a great example I came across was the playwright Edward Sheldon, and he was an amazing figure in New York, the New York stage in the early 1900s. And he was considered a life giver. And the interesting thing about him is, at the age of 30, after tremendous success and talent, he was stricken with an unusual progressive arthritic condition. And it became so serious that he became totally paralyzed and eventually became blind. And he had all these friends and people that loved and adored him, and his reaction was to invite them to his side and to tell them really firmly how to live more richly than they ever had before. And that was his message. And by the score, friends would come and visit, and they would leave feeling, much more than what they had come when they had come. They just felt more alive than when they had come to visit. He would listen to them intently. He would reprimand them when necessary if they were going in the wrong direction with kind of their message. But he would grieve with them when they were sad. He would rejoice with them in the smallest accomplishments and joys. But he always would demand their best. And that was the message he gave them. And an author, Anne Morrow Lindbergh, and she wrote about him, and she said, one went away refreshed and stimulated with 100 new paths shooting off in the mind and the quiet certainty that there was infinite time in which to follow them. The world opened up from those 4 closed walls. This guy was, in a situation, seemingly 4 closed walls, but there was a door that had opened inside of him, and he refused to paint the world in which he was in, the circumstances, the condition. He refused to paint it with gray and dark tones. He continued to make a difference. And he, in life, everything that we do is always issuing an invitation to one another, to live or die, to triumph or to surrender and be broken. When I am, when a person is with you, they either diminish or enforce and build. And we want to be a painting. We want to paint our world. We want to paint who we are. We want to paint in a way that creates brightness around the future. We're heading into a new year, and God and life have given us another year. And so inside it is the invitation to live. Inside it is the invitation to grow. Inside it is the invitation to complete, and to really be in touch. We live when we are true to ourselves, authentic. We live when we love. We are really living when we are involved in the lives of others. We live when we are committed to a sense of inner growth, and we live when we treasure life in ourselves and give that to others. And life grows as it is spent. For growth is the insignia of every living creature. We are here like a tree growing, not a standing statue. We are meant to grow. So ask God what it is that you, in this life, in this day, in this year, however it might be, what it is that you can do to be on mission, on task, on chore, on focus. What it is that you are to release, what it is that you are to embrace. Ask God to help you to go deeper into living the truth of your being, and then thereby being set free. Ask God to help you to see the imprisoned splendor that lies in you and in others and in the world. We have a work to do. We signed up for it. And we may have already done a good work. But as the saying goes, good, better, best, I'll never let it rest till my good is better and my better is best. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. At Unity, we believe that God's presence of love and goodness is everywhere, and that life is meant to be good. You can find out more about Unity and our teachings at unityhouston.org.
Are you currently church shopping, looking for that right church for you or your family? Perhaps you've been looking and been turned off by organized religion. It happens. Let me suggest you try Unity Church. We are a positive, practical, progressive approach to Christianity. Many who have found us have said, I didn't know there was a church that taught what I always believed. Let's be honest, people shop for clothes, good restaurants, and the right church that feeds them spiritually. If you're seeking a spiritual truth beyond tradition, try Unity Church. Come join us.